It's Thursday, April 8th, and this is now on H&N.
Yeah, the question is going to be, is the chief going to be held to this performance improvement plan?
HPD's embattled chief gets low marks for leadership and management in her latest review.
A Kona vacation among college buddies from the East Coast turned deadly.
I do not recall exactly how many punches. I know that I attempted one punch.
New details from the Kona courtroom just ahead.
President Biden lays out his plan to try and curb gun violence. I'm Deborah Alfrone with the details, his plea to Congress, and what critics are saying.
They passed not a single new federal law to reduce gun violence.
Plus, Maui considers reserving beach parking for residents. These stories and more coming up on This Is Now.
Officers responded. They found several victims, and they were checking the area, checking the building, looking for more victims.
We have a lot of breaking news to get to at this noon hour. We begin with this. Police are reporting that one person is dead and multiple people have been injured after a shooting at a business in Bryan, Texas. This is a live video feed of the scene right now coming into the H&N Digital Center. You can see a very active scene still going on there in Bryan, Texas. Here's what I know. Authorities say a possible suspect is now in custody. Of course, the motive is unclear at this time, but officials believe the suspect is an employee at that business. Other employees are being interviewed right now. You can see a lot of police activity there. Earlier, we were seeing a taped off loading dock to that warehouse looking business there in Bryan, Texas. I can tell you this, at least 4 people have been taken to the hospital in critical condition. If we get any updates in this newscast, of course, we'll pass them along to you. We have more breaking news just into our newsroom from the State Department of Health, too.
Health officials are reporting 122 new cases today, along with 3 new fatalities. The breakdown by island shows 11 cases on the Big Island, 1 on Kauai, 40 on Maui, 69 on Oahu, and 1 resident was diagnosed out of state. Today, Hilton Raethel, president and CEO at the Healthcare Association of Hawaii, gave us an update on when the state could reach herd immunity.
So we have a population of approximately 1.1 million who are 16 and older, and who currently qualify for the vaccines. If you look at 70% of that, that's about 770,000. So, but most of those individuals will either get the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine, and therefore they need 2 doses, but some of them will get Johnson & Johnson and they only need 1 dose. So we've done some calculations about what it will take to actually, how long it would take. And we believe that the current rate of getting vaccines both into the state and into people's arms, that we could be very close to having that 70% herd immunity by the end of May. Now, the 70% immunity, again, is just for those 16 and older. So we would like that number to actually be higher for that population.
Developing news. The Attorney General's office hit the maintenance shop at Honolulu's airport this morning. 2 people were arrested, suspected of theft, and the building was searched. We are waiting for details from the AG's office, and we'll bring those to you when we get them.
All right, Lynn Kawano here, joining us now, our chief investigative reporter here at H&N. Lynn's here to explain exactly what's going on with Chief Ballard's situation. Lynn, before we get started, I wanted to play out exactly what was said at the Police Commission meeting yesterday.
The Commission has concluded that there is poor communication within the department, and solutions need to be better articulated throughout command staff and the department. And that when problems arise, Chief Ballard must take responsibility and avoid laying any blame at the feet of individual command staff. As a result of this evaluation, the Commission seeks substantial improvement in the following areas: the elimination of the culture of blame within the department. We ask that Chief Ballard, with the help of her command staff, anticipate and mitigate risks inherent in any important decision.
So, Lynn, can you sort of dumb that down for us? Explain exactly what she meant there when she was listing off those items in that review.
You know, it was pretty amazing to hear Police Commission Chair Shannon Olivado list off the things that the commission found about Chief Ballard that really knocked down her review in terms of leadership and managerial. And one of the big things there was the laying blame, right? Chief Ballard tends to kind of deflect from herself. When there are issues, she says it's the command's problem or it's the officer's problem. She once said her officers are sometimes like children and you have to scold them and kind of keep them in line. And I think it's really important that the police commissioners picked up on that anytime there was a controversy or an issue like the quota, Chief Ballard was talking about instituting a quota system so that they could kind of evaluate the performance of officers. Well, that got out a little bit ahead of her schedule, and so she blamed command officers for releasing that without her approval. Really, that you're supposed to keep control, right? You're supposed to be able to communicate better with your command and your officers. So she deflected blame a lot, and the police commission really picked up on that. They also picked up on her inability to really communicate and deal with the media and the public, whether or not that's a COVID issue or if the chief just doesn't really want to deal with it. You know, once Zoom came on board and we were able to do all kinds of things online, there really was no excuse for her to not meet with some of these public groups, some of these watchdog groups, and of course the media.
So what's next? I've heard this described as somewhat of a probation period.
Yeah, I describe it as a probation period. They've given her 60 days to make some of these improvements. One of them is to call weekly or bi-weekly, press conferences or meetings with the press, and to do a little bit more, be a little bit more open with the media as well as some of these community groups. And we spoke with many community groups who say they felt ignored by the police chief in the last year, whereas that started out really well in the first 2 years. It dropped off, and there were alternatives because of COVID that she didn't really take advantage of.
And one of those groups we're hearing from today is the ACLU. Let's play out some of that sound.
It's been good to see that it seems like for the first time in a while, a number of commissioners have been asking some tough questions, which really isn't something we've seen before. There's been a lot of just kind of cheerleading from the commission in the past, and in recent months, there seems to be a shift there, which is encouraging.
So that was the ACLU there. You're also hearing from some other advocates and groups, right?
And they agree with what Joshua Wish said from the ACLU. You know, she kind of fell off and wasn't very good at communicating with some of these groups. One thing the ACLU is really concerned about is they want to look at these use of force numbers and statistics, and Chief Ballard has kind of pushed off that issue for them, whereas the ACLU feels that's a really important issue on the mainland, nationwide. You know, police reform is one of the topics that's really hitting all these states, and Chief Ballard has said there's no problem here in the Loja state, and the ACLU wants to have a discussion. And it doesn't appear like she wants to really have a discussion. Other groups have come forward as well saying, you know, we really would like to have more dialogue when it comes to mental health issues, all of these things that police departments now are facing. And it seems like Chief Ballard is kind of turning her back on these groups.
And before you go, Lynn, did I get this right? She wasn't even there at the meeting while the review was being read. She was there earlier, but then left, right?
She was there earlier. She was there for the bulk of the meeting up until they went into executive session. She was answering questions. She was doing Q&A with the commissioners. But then during an executive session where she was presented her review, she didn't come back. And I noticed that right away. I even said out loud, "Where's Chief Ballard?" to everyone around me. And Shannon Olivado said that Chief Ballard had a 4 o'clock appointment, which I thought was very unusual because these police commission meetings, we know when they happen. I know the next one is on April 21st. So you know when you're supposed to be there. That's her job, to be at these meetings. And she knew her review was coming out. We've known for weeks that was the day it was coming out. So for her to not be available or to make an appointment on that day, on that particular time, it seemed very suspect. It seemed almost like she was hiding from what was coming out.
And we didn't hear from her on camera, but we did get a statement. Real quickly, summarize what that said.
You know, honestly, Jonathan, when I read that statement, it sounds like she was, again, placing blame. She said she was disappointed in it. She kind of deflected from herself again, but then said that she sees room for improvement, and there's always room for improvement. So hopefully, you know, she takes these 60 days and she understands that there are things that the public sees, that the commissioners are seeing, and that she needs to work on these things. Morale is really in the dumps right now. From what I'm hearing from many of the police officers, there's a lot that needs to change.
All right, Lynn Kawano joining us here on This Is Now. Let's toss it back over to Ashley.
President Biden promised to send new gun control legislation to Congress on his first day in office, but it will be hard to pass through a divided Senate. So today he's taking executive actions on new gun safety measures. Deborah Alfarone reports from the White House.
President Biden is taking steps on his own to enact new gun safety measures.
We have an opportunity to fulfill the first responsibility of government, to keep our people safe.
Today's actions include orders for the Justice Department to draft red flag legislation that states can model to keep guns out of the hands of people facing mental health issues. The department will also have 30 days to create new rules addressing ghost guns, self-assembled weapons that require no serial number. And President Biden wants a 60-day review of how stabilizing braces for pistols are regulated. A stabilizing brace was used in last month's Boulder, Colorado mass shooting. The accessory enables pistols to fire like short-barreled rifles and makes them more accurate.
Greater stability means greater accuracy and control.
The White House says today's actions are just a first step.
They've offered plenty of thoughts and prayers, members of Congress, but they've passed not a single new federal law to reduce gun violence.
President Biden also plans to name a gun control advocate to head up the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. David Shipman, a former ATF agent, has been an advisor to the gun control organization set up by former Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords.
Vice President Harris and I believe he's the right person at this moment for this important agency.
The NRA issued a statement saying it will fight this nomination and ill-conceived executive actions. Deborah Alfarone, CBS News, the White House.
A Kona getaway for 3 tourists from the East Coast turned deadly after one of them became, quote, psychotically drunk, according to testimony.
At some point in the night, did you decide to go back to your Airbnb?
Yes.
And why was that?
I decided to return to the Airbnb, not because I wanted to on my own, but I needed to take Abhishek home. He had drank way too much, and he was asked to leave a bar, and so I knew that I needed to take him home so that he didn't get into any trouble.
Alexander Jeremy Wald said at a preliminary hearing for his college friend, Benjamin Fleming, who was charged with manslaughter in the strangulation of their friend, Abhishek Gupta.
When Mr. Fleming returned to the Airbnb, I was in the side bedroom where I had retired to because Mr. Gupta was berating me, and I felt like I needed to seclude myself in the bedroom with the door locked.
When Mr. Fleming got there, how did you know he arrived?
I heard him open the door, and almost immediately upon entering the Airbnb, he was confronted by Mr. Gupta.
Did you hear what Mr. Gupta said to him?
I did. He was berating Mr. Fleming just like he was berating me. Upon hearing Mr. Gupta confront Mr. Fleming, I emerged from the room.
And what happened then?
I approached Mr. Gupta. He saw me walking towards him, and he stood up and he approached me, and a short fist fight ensued.
Fleming allegedly then intervened and restrained Gupta.
Mr. Fleming came to my aid and restrained Mr. Gupta, preventing him from punching me further.
And how did he restrain Mr. Gupta?
I believe that he put Mr. Gupta in a restraining hold.
The hearing continues today at 1:30. We'll have an update on later editions of Hawaii News Now and on your H&N digital platforms.
Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi says Oahu will stay in Tier 3 for now. Based on the current tier system, Oahu was supposed to roll back to Tier 2 yesterday, but Blangiardi says that won't happen for at least 4 weeks, if at all. During that time, he says the city and state will be monitoring case counts and figuring out how to adjust the tier system to fit the times, with vaccinations up and hospitalizations down. With case counts still rising, some worry now is not the time to loosen restrictions. Here's Dr. Tim Brown of the East-West Center.
We still have a substantial portion of our elderly population that has not even received a single vaccine yet. And we're about to open up, if we follow President Biden's suggestion that the state is implying they will on April 19th, open it up to everybody. Those people are going to have a very hard time getting in for vaccinations.
Dr. Brown says Michigan last month had roughly the same number of cases per capita as Hawaii, but he says their infection rate has now more than quadrupled. Maui is considering reserving beach parking for residents. Lacey Denise has the details.
The Maui County Council is considering measures that would reserve at least half of all public beach access parking for residents and for visitors to be charged parking fees. The proposals came as frustration has increased because of overcrowding and large numbers of tourists, the Maui News reported. Council Vice Chairwoman Kiani Rawlins-Fernandez, who introduced both proposals, envisions a beach parking program where resident vehicles could get stickers or another identification to allow access. Another possibility would be the addition of parking fee machines that would scan Hawaii drivers' licenses and print tickets for display on car dashboards. Enforcement would be funded by non-resident parking fees. Signs would be posted and stalls painted to inform visitors of the rules. A local company could be contracted for enforcement, or county ranger services could be expanded. Rawlins-Fernandez said visitor vehicles parked in resident spaces would be towed. Both issues referred to the council's Budget and Finance Committee for an upcoming meeting likely in July. For This Is Now, I'm Lacey Denise.
Cruise ships have not set sail in the U.S. for more than a year. Other countries are now allowing them. Errol Barnett explains why the CDC is not allowing it to happen here.
We want to get ourselves going everywhere.
In his first sit-down interview since the pandemic began, Royal Caribbean CEO Richard Fain tells CBS News he's pushing to set sail again.
We would like to work closely with the CDC to make sure that we do that in a safe and healthy way.
No cruise ship with passengers has left a U.S. port in over a year. But cruises have resumed elsewhere.
On board the ship, we're required to wear a surgical mask at any time we're moving around the ship.
Morgan O'Brien is an American travel video blogger living in Germany.
People are getting temperature checks every day. We have to be tested 72 hours before the cruise leaves. And of course, it has to be a negative PCR test.
Royal Caribbean has tested those systems abroad, and Fain says with encouraging results.
The Royal Caribbean Group alone has carried over 100,000 guests, and of that, we've only had 10 cases. We would like to be treated in a very similar way to the airlines and other forms of transportation.
The CDC recommends passengers and crew get vaccines before boarding, but some companies are taking it further. Royal Caribbean and Norwegian say they will require all passengers and crew to be inoculated.
Here in the next few months, should they be able to set sail, what will be different?
All the cruise lines are working towards the best protocols. That includes new ways of circulating air, new filtration. It includes cleanliness. It includes testing.
They will test passengers before, during, and after trips. They also have contact tracing technology called a tracelet that can allow them to identify who may have come in close contact with people who are infected. And the industry in the U.S. wants to get back up and running by July. Errol Barnett, CBS News, Miami.
And here's another look at today's COVID case count as we bring you some breaking news. Just minutes ago, the state health department announced it will be expanding eligibility for COVID vaccines on Oahu to people 50 years and older starting Monday, April 12th. State Health Director Dr. Libby Char says this is an opportunity for older residents to get their shots before eligibility opens up to everyone 16 and older on April 19th, as directed by President Biden.
All right, switching gears, taking it outside, seeing a little wind bouncing around our camera there over Aloha Tower. Let's get you over to Guy Hoggy with an update on our forecast.
How's it on this Thursday? We have beautiful trade wind weather both today and tomorrow, but that means a few windward and Mauka showers, mainly in the overnight and early morning hours. This morning we had a few showers for the usual spots, but leeward sides remained very, very dry. and those winds will be brisk and breezy, already in double digits for most areas. It's going to be a very windy day today. We're thinking the winds will be running somewhere around 15 to 25 miles an hour, with Kona being the exception. They'll likely get some lighter winds. And because of all the sunshine, that UV index is very high on the scale at 10. All in all, it's going to be a gorgeous trade wind weather day, which will likely be the same conditions we see tomorrow. Now, as far as the surf, it's dropping, but it's still big and dangerous for north and east shores especially. That's why the high surf advisory is posted there. Fun waves in town, just 1 to 3, and the box jellyfish should be gone today, so that's the good news. So again, breezy trade wind weather today and tomorrow. A few scattered showers for windward areas, lots of leeward sunshine. And then the weather changes over the weekend because we lose the trade winds. Variable winds take over Saturday and Sunday. That will lead to some afternoon cloud buildups and some spotty afternoon showers. No widespread rain, although we could see a few more windward showers come in as the trade winds come back in on Monday. We'll have more details on air and online.
Well, it's one of the largest meadows in the world, and scientists say it's helping fight climate change. But this lush space is not where you expect it. Ian Lee explains.
This ship is sailing to a place few have been.
It's uncharted waters.
Uncharted waters, scientists say, could hold the keys to combating climate change. A look below the waves in this corner of the Indian Ocean reveals a carpet of green for miles and miles.
It appears that it is the largest contiguous seagrass bed ever, globally.
Scientists say seagrass like this underwater meadow captures more planet-warming carbon dioxide per square mile than a forest. That's a lot, considering the plateau is roughly the size of Switzerland.
It stores carbon, so it's our biggest tool against the climate crisis.
It's also home to a lot of sea life.
It was simply amazing. A lot of seagrass, corals, small schools of fish.
But environmental experts say seagrass is in danger, with the world losing a football field's worth every 30 minutes because of human activity. Activist Shamat Sanduya dove deep to get the message out.
We're demanding climate action, strong climate actions, which includes protecting this huge area.
Scientists say protecting the environment will also preserve our future. Ian Lee, CBS News.
Thanks, Ian Lee. Let's get to some good news. I love these auction stories. This time we're talking about Superman. Check this out. This issue of Superman just broke another record, selling for $3.2 million. What? I know, right? It's the first issue that first introduced Superman to readers way back in 1938. Back then, it only cost 10 cents. Yeah. Pretty impressive stuff there, for sure.
I feel like we should start saving all of our things right now, because in decades it'll be worth millions.
I know.
Yeah.
Those Pokemon cards.
That's right. So meanwhile, a rare postcard written by a Titanic crew member is going under the hammer next week. The ship's radio operator, Jack Phillips, wrote this card to his sister just weeks before the Titanic's fatal journey. An auction house says Phillips is a forgotten hero of the Titanic saga. That's because he kept sending SOS messages to other ships while the Titanic was sinking. Phillips managed to get into a lifeboat, but he still died from exposure to the cold. The auction house says his postcard is expected to fetch about $15,000, and bidding closes April 14th. That's the 109th anniversary of the ship's sinking. And never before heard music by Prince is being released 5 years after his death. The Prince Estate and Legacy Recordings has announced the release of Welcome to America. Prince wrote and recorded the album before the 2010 tour, but it was never made public. The title track, Welcome to America, is already streaming on several platforms, including Spotify and Apple Music.